Today's guest is the one and only Jay Whitlow, a intrapreneur, life achiever, storyteller on a mission, and officially the new author of The Echo Between Hope and Healing. Jay's life is a living testimony of what it means to lead with purpose, even when the path is painful. Welcome back to Unplug with Mel. I'm your host, Mel Mosier. In this raw and powerful conversation, we dive into the quiet battles men often face in silence, especially around infertility, identity, and the search for approval. Jay opens up about the weight of not being enough and the grief of infertility from the male perspective and how that journey almost broke him. This is also a story of redemption. If you've ever wrestled with fatherhood or what it means to live a life on mission, this one will echo something deep within you. A while back, we were talking at a park about how we tell our story to inspire infinite growth, which is the preface of my podcast. And now you're a guest because you have a story that just made me stop in my tracks at the park and just immerse into it like I was there. Like I wanted to know everything about it. And here we are, because we're going to be talking about several things, including your first book. Is this your first book coming out?
First book, correct? Yeah.
Yes. So we'll go into all that stuff about your book. Now, Jay, when we talk about telling our story and inspiring infinite growth, I have all these people come onto the podcast and you get to say who you are, a little bit of your bio, not much, but just tell the people who are listening in today who you are.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Mel, for having me on. I'm ready to get unplugged and have a great conversation with you. Jay Whitlow, been in Midland since 2007. I'm married for 33 years.
Wow.
Have three adult children. So we are in the what some people call the empty nest stage.
Yeah.
I call it a new season, and I just like to enjoy each season that I'm in. And this is a great season right now, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, as we talk about your new season, it takes a journey to get there. So, Jay, your journey has so many layers. A new author, a dad, an entrepreneur, an advocate. When someone asks, what do you do? How do you begin to answer that?
That's a great question, and I get that quite a bit. Actually, today, several people are like, what is it that you do? I kind of put it into the term of I love to tell stories. You know, when I was little, my parents told me, don't tell stories, right? And now I'm telling stories. So it's a kind of a different flavor. But I find myself as a missional entrepreneur. And that is, if you break those two words down, missional is very on purpose, purpose driven. There's a reason, there's a why. And then entrepreneur is just somebody who is innovative, somebody who likes to start new things, create new things. So I like to put those two words together. And one of those is obviously a book that I've never done, but I've wanted to do it. It's on my bucket list. But I also wanted to do it because I wanted the stories to be something that would live forever for my kids. And then we'll get into this a little bit, but one of the journeys of that I went through, I want maybe there's somebody out there who can grab a hold of something that I share, or they can sense a struggle that I went through and how I overcame that and the victory through it, and it will help them down the road. I have 20 plus years in church paid ministry, and I say paid ministry because as a believer, Scripture tells me that we are all supposed to be ministers and mission-minded people, but I got the chance to be actually paid to do some of that for over 20 years. I've been a teacher, faculty at a community college in the Dallas-Frisco area. I'm a minority owner of the Odessa Jackalopes locally here, part of a Texoma FC team in the Sherman-Denison area. That I love that group and want to be a part of that as much as I can. And then I do community engagement. I've had a podcast before. I'm always sitting down with people wanting to hear their stories. Coffee is a great thing for me. Having a cup of coffee and having a conversation with people. And so I just love to hear people's story. Everybody has a story. And I hear a lot of times, well, mine's not that great. Well, you know what? You're wrong. Your story is great. If you're breathing and you're alive, you have a story, and it's awesome. And you need a platform and an opportunity to share that.
I love all of that. I mean, we had a cup of coffee in a park and we were exchanging stories right then and there. So everyone has a story. You described yourself as a life architect when we spoke, and I thought that it's not just a cool title, but it's a calling. What does it mean to you, and how do you step into that role?
That's a great question. And I think the thing that kind of solidified that, and I talk about it in my book, was it is a calling. It is something that I believe I can help people with the experiences I've had, help shape as they start navigating through their world and through life. Because life is going to throw some things at you. I hear people say all the time, I'm just living with the cards that I was dealt. Well, let's do something with those cards. Let's just not accept it. Let's do something with it. And when I was a student intern, I was probably 19, 20 years old, just graduated college. I was working at a church and we were on a mission trip. And unfortunately, on this mission trip, we had a young lady pass away on the trip unexpectedly. We weren't prepared for that. And that began to change my whole perspective because she left this earth doing something that she wanted to do, and that was to serve little kids on a mission trip. And I thought, what a way to go. What a way to meet your maker. And him go, what were you doing when I called you home? I was serving you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in front of my maker one day, my creator, and him go, what were you doing when I called you home? Well, I don't really want to tell you what I was doing. It's embarrassing, or it wasn't serving you. And so I made that commitment that day that I would serve him, that I would be involved in what he wanted for me to do for his kingdom here on earth. And that is just to help people find what their God-given talents are and what their purpose is on this earth.
That's so good, Jay. Well, when we have a moment before we get into the next question, let's talk about this book. We haven't said the title or
Sure.
anything like that. So, what is your book called, and when does it become available?
It is called The Echo Between Hope and Healing. It comes out on Amazon around the 17th to the 20th, somewhere in June. It should be out and ready to go right after Father's Day, which I think will be a really good piece to the story because it talks about infertility, it talks about adoption, and then parenting through all of those processes, even to having biological kids. And I'd love to unpack some of that with you. But the
Yes.
reason why I chose The Echo is because I'm a huge music fan, right? I love music, all genres, mostly old Texas Southern rock, 38 Specials, ZZ Top, all that.
Yes.
All of that, right? Rush, give it to me, right? And so when I hear a lyric from a song, and it may not be a really popular song, it's just a song I listen to, and I hear that lyric, it takes me back to a moment in my life, good and bad, and reminds me of what life was like at that time, what decisions that I made, what choices were in front of me. Some choices bad, some choices good, some were out of my control, some were in my control. But when I hear that lyric, then I wrote about a chapter about that. So, one of those songs is U2. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And I'm 58 years old and I still struggle with approval. And it is something that I chase. I chase approval from you. I chase approval from people. I want people to like me. I want them to be approved of what I'm doing. And I chased that my entire life, mostly because I had a dad who was very abusive verbally to me, hard on me, wouldn't let me have successes because I didn't do enough. And I never want my kids or any kids to feel like they're not enough. And so I wrote all my stories coming out of lyrics. So when you read the book, there's like one or two lines of a song, and then I wrote about that in that chapter, and then the next chapter the same thing. So you can tie each chapter to a lyric.
How amazing is that? Because when they read it and they correlate the song, or maybe they never heard the song before, but now they're going to go check out the song. And then now that is going to be a core memory for them because they're reading a book. It's doing those lyrics, and then you're going to explain your story of why those lyrics mean something to you. But I don't want to give too much away from the book, but there's a part of your book that I want to dive into if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Because there's not a lot of out there. And as we were talking in that park, I would have never known by looking at you that A, one, that you always struggled with looking for approval, and two, that you suffered from infertility. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't from your wife, it was you.
Mm-hmm.
And when that kind of just was a raw thing to let someone new just know, and then it was like, wow, I've never really heard of a gentleman ever really speaking candidly about their own struggles into, procreation, to creating a family, and how that could be from hope and grief, like is in your, with your book title. So what did writing it teach you about yourself when you were letting that story unfold in the infertility sector?
Mel, it was a very dark time for me as well as for my wife, because no matter what you go through individually, it becomes part of your couple story, right? And so I will never forget hearing those words that, and let me back up. First off, growing up, you want to be a dad, or at least I did. I always wanted to be a dad. I wanted to do things differently than my dad. I've always heard you're always going to be like your dad. And I'm like, I'm never going to be like my dad. I want my kids to have a complete 180 from what I grew up with and stuff. And then when you're praying for that, you're believing in that to happen, and then you sit in the doctor's office and the doctor says, nope, there's no way this is going to happen. The two of you are not going to have kids at all. It's zero chance. It does something to you as a man, because to be real and to be honest with you, this is not a topic that we go to Tall City Brewery here in Midland and have a drink over.
Mm-hmm.
Guys don't sit around a campfire and talk about the fact that they have infertility. They struggle with it. You walk into a bookstore today, you will find shelves full of books and stories about loss from the female's perspective. And it should be that way because they do carry a lot of that side of it, right? But the last time I checked, men are part of that process. And if we can't provide that, where's the outlet for us to talk?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was on staff as a pastor, church staff person, I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about that
Yeah.
because I'm supposed to be there for you.
Yeah.
You're the congregation. You're the students that I'm working with. You're the college students that I'm working with. I can't share with you my problems,
Yep.
my struggle. I've got to hold that all inside. And my encouragement to anybody listening, never hold your struggles inside, no matter how deep, dark, or surface level you think they are. Do not hide your emotions. And guys are always told, if you cry, you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
If you get help, you're weak. And I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that anymore because I saw what it did to me, where it put me in a very dark place of anger and bitterness
Mm-hmm.
toward God, toward my spouse, toward myself mostly. I mean, that's where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it was like, what a loser, what a failure.
Yeah.
And you take that, Mel, with I can't even have kids, and couple that with the struggle that I've had with approval
Mm-hmm.
and self-esteem from that approval chasing, it it was devastating. And I can't go into all the details, obviously, or we'd be here for 3 hours, but it sent me in a spiral in a dark place. And when you're sitting across the bed from your mother who is dying from cancer, and she is saying, I'd like to have grandkids before I die. What does that do to you? You know,
It's devastating.
we have no control over that,
Yep.
Mom. We're trying, you know. Um, and so the story that I write about, I had to go back to that feeling, right? A lot of times when you write books about a framework of coaching or mentoring, or these are the 5 things you should do to increase your sales at your company and stuff, those are great, but that doesn't take you back to a dark time in your life. And I felt like to really get this out, I needed to go back to that space. I needed to go back to what that felt like. And not to be rude or not to be crude or anything, but I do talk about this in the book. The fact of going to the doctor and having to give the sample
Mm-hmm.
for them to check. I cannot tell you how humiliating that is. How the beautiful part of creation has been dwindled down to a science experiment, basically. And to come out of that room and everybody in the office knows what you're
What you did.
carrying and what
Yep.
happened
Yep.
is it again begins to push you down. And I do believe the enemy just loves to do that, loves to just push us down till we have no more self-esteem, we have no more self-worth, we feel like a failure, we feel like, you know, you do the list, right?
The
All the
list.
things.
I'm gonna pause you right there because I mean, I'm honored that I'm getting to interview you before the book actually comes out, but then I can't wait to read it and then have you back on to discuss some things more in depth because this this niche of infertility and women creating books and talking about the journey, and there's not a lot of men that does it because of vulnerability in men is still a stigma. It's still not happening as often
Mm-hmm.
as we need it to be. The difficult conversations for men to open up and saying, this is real, this happened to me, but it's happening to thousands others, and they need an outlet. They need to express themselves in a healthy way because guaranteed, if they're already listening to it and they've experienced something, they handle some of this unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Resentment builds and divorces happen, and there's no healing in that. And the enemy has come in and won basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so the vulnerability that you have done to get this book out and also going back in time, like you're rehashing some wounds to get this book out to help others. And if it just helps one person, that's the reason why the book
Mm-hmm.
needed to be done. But let's talk more about your vulnerability and growth in this. Obviously, you've come out on the other side. You decided to write the book to help in the healing process. How cathartic was it to write the book for you?
You know, I've always been the guy that's like, I'm not going to counseling. I'm not going to therapy. I'm not going
Ugh.
to do that.
Yes.
But this was better than going to counseling and therapy because I got to deal with it on my own terms. I got to look at things from a perspective at, 50 plus years old to back when I was in my 20s and 30s when I was struggling with it, right? And like, what if I would have dealt with some of this back then? What would life look like for me now? And I have to keep telling myself, this is all this. I'm a big believer in seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Not every season is a fruit bearing season,
Yep.
right? There's got to be some dormant times, there's got to be some dead times, but it makes the growth even better in the seasons of growth, right? And I love walking. I kind of think about this a lot when I think about how I've grown through the therapy piece, the struggle piece, all of that. I always think of walking along the side of the road and seeing a crack in the cement, and there's a flower or grass growing through that, and I'm like, that's horrible. They need to kill that grass. They need to kill that flower. But you know what? That flower, that piece of grass, found its way out, and
Mm.
that's what happened to me. I was able to share some of this over time and then get to the point of the book where it was like, look at that flower growing through the crack, and it's beautiful. Even though it is one of those things where people will run to Lowe's and get the weed feed and kill it. I'm like, no, will you water that thing?
Mm-hmm.
You pour water on it, you get the sunlight on it, and you let it grow, because that seed found its way through the mess, through the crack,
Oh, I
and now
love
it's
that.
growing.
I
And
love that.
and I think that's God's purpose for us.
Oh yeah, I do too. In this journey of becoming a writer and stuff like that, and I love how you said that it was one of the best ways of doing therapy because it was on your own terms, and I resonate with that. And if you're listening today, I want to encourage you, if you're doing some type of journaling or you're writing down notes, or if a song resonates and you want to write down how that song made you feel, or a quote that you heard, or a book that you read, those are the moments that you need to document it. Now, you might not be thinking right now that you're ever going to be an author. You may never publish what you're writing. But when you look back 5 years from there, you have tangible notes to go back to and going, oh, I came out of that. I'm not there no more. I'm not in that season. And you'll remember to recognize what skills, what your style, how did you get out of that? Was it therapy? Was it just, small wins, getting up every day, taking that shower, talking to someone that has gone through it before you? I never knew that the way my brain worked and the way I documented my journal like a diary, like a little girl did, um, would become useful for me 35 years later. But I have all of this growth in books. And so I go, oh yeah, I'm totally not like what I was at 18. And then I see in my 20s when I was like, oh man, I was so naive. I didn't even know like I just reacted to things and totally was not healed from trauma from my childhood. So if you are listening today and encouraged by Jay, whatever you decide to do, realize that you are that flower already in the crack, and you're just now watering it. You can water it by music. You can water it by your faith. You can water it by writing. You can water it by storytelling, getting in a group and just a support group and just talking about it. And I encourage those that are listening that that's the way to start if you're still stuck in that season. Moving on before we move from the book, or is there any other part of the book that you feel comfortable talking about?
Well, the story of infertility has to have the other part of the story, and that is that we did adopt, right?
Yes.
So we're in the process. We're in the process of going through the infertility and all the the testing and everything for in vitro, the whole thing. I mean, we went through it for over 10 years, and we're getting to the point where, you know what, maybe this is the season. God wants us to not worry about the fact that we can't have biological, that we're going to adopt. And so some good friends at a church that we were attending connected us to an organization out of California for an international adoption. And so we thought, this is the way we're going to do it, because if you know anything about the broken system in the US for fostering and adoption, it takes a long time to get a uh, an infant. You have to be on a waiting list for a long time. And we thought, we don't want to wait that long, right? We were already 10, 11 years into marriage, but we didn't want to wait a little bit longer to get a toddler or an infant. And so we chose a little boy out of uh, Moscow, Russia. His name is Yuri, and he was a toddler. And we had just a grainy video, pictures of him and stuff. And we were so excited about adopting him. And we've gone through all the paperwork, done all the necessary items, checked off all the boxes for adoption. And the phone rang one day from this same adoption agency, and they said, this is the weirdest thing, but we want to know if you would consider a second adoption. And we were like, we're already adopting one. And their policy was only one adoption at a time. And we were adopting internationally. But this happened to be a little girl that was born very prematurely. Her mother went into labor at the mall. and she wasn't supposed to make it through the night. She made it. She wasn't supposed to make it through the weekend. She made it. Wasn't supposed to make it through the week. I mean, she just kept fighting and fighting and fighting. And so these two teenage kids who had this baby girl uh, realized that they weren't going to be able to give the kind of care that she needed. They looked through all of the files. They said, "We don't really like any of these. Do you have anybody else?" Well, we have this other one. So they looked at our file and they were like, "This is the one. We really believe it." Their parents had met, looked at the file and said, we believe this is it. And that was us. So we were now going from 0 kids to 2 adoptions within just a few months of each other. So we prayed about it. We said, yeah, we want to do it. We sought some good counsel from some people. We said, yeah, we're going to do it. So we both kind of took some time off of our jobs. We were teaching. My wife was a teacher in elementary school. I was at the community college teaching. And so we said, we're going to take some time, and we flew to California to adopt this little girl. And then once we got back, we were making plans to go to Russia to get little Yuri. And so we went. California law is that you have to wait a week. So we're sitting in a hotel room with, this little girl waiting for the mom to decide if she wanted to take her back or not. I mean, that was crushing, because like if the phone rings, and we didn't have cell phones and stuff back then. This was in, gosh, I'm really going to date myself now, but this was in this was in 99, 2000, right around that time frame. And I can always remember how old she is because it's the year 25. So I know she's 25 years old. So the birth mom told the agency, we don't want to wait the whole week. They can go. So we flew home. We had to get permission from the airlines because she was she was like a little loaf of bread, right? As far as her size and stuff. We flew home.
Flying with her. Woo!
Yeah, and it was when I first met her, she was lit up like a Christmas tree. She had wires all over her in the NIC unit, and it was just, you've seen that, and we just didn't know, we didn't know how to take care of this little thing. It was like a little doll, but it was the most amazing moment when I held her, and then we got on the plane, we flew home, and then after we got home, we found out that the Russian government had denied the adoption of the little boy. And so we lost him. What they did was they wanted to make sure that no boy during that time frame was adopted by anybody in America. And so they found a very distant relative who would come in and adopt him. And so we lost little Yuri in the midst of gaining Carolyn, which is our adopted daughter. And then a couple of years later, Mel, we had our own biological child. And after that, we had our second biological child. After being told it would never happen to us. So what I want to share, you want to stop me on that one?
Did y'all just hear that? Decades of being told he's the problem. Infertility can't happen. All these tests, poke and prod, feeling like a testing experiment. Not a father, not a man, not a human being gets the honor of adoption. They finally figure out this is the way they're going to go. About to have 2 adoptions in the same year, which is unheard of. There's a part in here though, right? That when you were deciding on Yuri or now Carolyn, there was a moment that you thought maybe y'all shouldn't go through Carolyn,
right?
Because of Yuri's already done. But then something happened to where you're like, no, we can do both.
We can do both. It was just through prayer, through some counseling, and just through knowing that it was right. You just know. People say, how do you know that you're marrying the right person? You just know.
You just know. Yeah.
You just know.
So I want to highlight that because of saying yes to Carolyn, giving her name and that she's 25 to this day. You felt that in your spirit because he was showing you the way, because what's in your control and not in your control is the government. That's an international adoption, and the rug was just pulled out from you guys. But now you have to, take care of Carolyn. So there's a less of a grieving thing, but I'm pretty sure you still grieved the thought of having Yuri in your home, right?
We still do. In fact, I write about 4 births in our family, and he will always be a
Wow.
piece of that. And sidebar, right now he is 25, so
Mm.
he's Carolyn's age. He's also the age of, and we don't know where he is, what's going on. We never really kept up with that after we lost that. It was like, but he's still a part of us. I can still see his face, even though it's been 25 years. But right now, with the war in Russia and Ukraine, I don't know if he was in that war. I don't know if he
Hmm.
lost his life in that war. I don't know if he fought in that war. I don't know if he's still fighting in that war. I don't know
Mm.
if he moved away from Russia. I would love to know that.
Ooh,
That would be one of those
maybe
things
this
that I
can get
would
out
love to
there.
know.
Yuri, if you're listening, yeah, I can in some show notes will be a way to contact
Yeah.
Jay. But
Yeah.
talk, 4 births, 4 moments in your life, but the last two are
Hmm.
biologically yours. And the enemy came in and kept saying it was never gonna happen. But
Hmm.
then you're focusing on Carolyn and you're loving her, and you're now a father, your wife's a mother, and you relax a little and things just happen,
Hmm.
and here you are, you got, and I take it, the other two are both girls too, they're
No,
daughters,
one boy, one girl.
one boy, one girl,
So
and
Reese is 22,
woo,
and then Krista is 20.
all right, look at that. So there's more in the book, I'm sure, of this, but I just want the
Sure.
audience to just take a moment here and just realize what happens when you are led by faith, or what you know is what you know, like this is the partner I want to marry, this is the
Hmm.
thing, and trust in that. And it may not happen overnight. It might not happen in your
Hmm.
timeline that you think it is this season. And then all of a sudden, oh, now I know. Now I see this is what was supposed to happen. Because if you had not focused on it in international adoption, then you would have never met, known of Yuri, but you also
Hmm.
wouldn't have gotten the call from the same agency and being picked from that couple, those two teenagers, for Carolyn.
And I think, Mel, just to be honest, there's a part of me that says, maybe God knew providentially that we weren't going to get Yuri, even though he was giving us all the signs. We were, like I said earlier, we were checking the boxes. We were doing everything we were supposed to. We were saving up money to get on the plane. And we actually it was Christmas. Went to get Carolyn in February. And that Christmas, we got Christmas presents with his name on it.
Mm.
And we had to get rid of those. So again, that's another loss. It's like a,
Mm-hmm.
a, a family who has a stillborn, or a child that they lose, a miscarriage or whatever. We went through that grieving of losing him, even though we had never held him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think somehow God knew, A, my wife and I wouldn't have survived if we weren't able to even adopt. If we didn't get Carolyn and then we were told, you can't even adopt, I don't think we would have survived. And I even write in the book that Carolyn saved us, saved our marriage, because I was coming out of a dark place of the infertility and all of the bitterness and the hatred and the anger and lashing out at people and just going a completely different road than I needed to. And then beginning to kind of turn my life back around and realize that there's hope and there's grace in all of this. And then God drops, because I really do believe he knew we weren't going to be able to get Yuri. And so he placed Carolyn there and said, do you trust me?
Mm.
Do you trust
Yes.
me? And we're like, we're going to do two? Are you kidding me? Can you imagine, Mel, if we would have said, no, we're good with our one?
Mm-hmm.
Because our one wasn't even going to happen. We didn't know that, but it wasn't going to
It's
happen.
crazy faith at that point. It's
It's
crazy
crazy
faith
faith. It's crazy
to,
faith.
to,
And
to go from
I,
zero to two
to one.
without, in the hopes of that both are going to happen. And one of
Hmm.
them, Carolyn's special needs. And she's premature. She's tiny. She's got
Yeah.
all these health things going on. And y'all are going, can we take that on?
Hmm.
And then can we take on Yuri and anything that he needs? And so God's like, okay, Carolyn happened. And we made the way for Carolyn, but Yuri's okay where he's at. So
Hmm.
no, he closed it for you guys so you could focus on Carolyn. Yes, there's grieving involved and a loss and realizing that you didn't, after you signed on for two, you know,
Mhm.
things change. How long between Carolyn and your first biological?
3 years.
3 years. So in that focusing of Carolyn for 3 years, ta-da! God
Yeah,
says, now I'm opening this one up for you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I a lot of what we're talking about, I write in the book, obviously a lot more
Better.
elaborate. Um, but I hate to wait. I really do
Mm.
hate to wait, right? I hate to
Mm-hmm.
wait on elevators.
Mm.
I hate to wait on lines at Disney World. I just hate to wait. I hate waiting on Advil to kick in,
Uh, yeah.
right? I hate to wait. But looking at waiting 10 years of infertility to get to where we are today, the, there's joy in the waiting. And
Mm.
it's the destination doesn't always look like the way you want the destination to look at the beginning. And there's
My,
joy in that waiting.
and
It
that's what we need to be
sucks at the
reminded of.
beginning,
Yeah.
right? It sucks at the beginning,
I
but
mean, just looking at the grand
there's,
scheme of life, if we think we have it all mapped out,
mhm,
you know, if we think we know exactly how we want our lives to go, and we know ourselves enough to make it. If we're impatient, we try and we try and we get roadblock and roadblock. If we don't pause and look at the journey of going, okay, this is not working. I'm spinning my wheels. I'm
mhm,
exhausted. That's not my purpose in life. What is it trying to teach me in the waiting? And it's to stop
mhm,
and smell the roses, enjoy what we have. You know, patience is a virtue. I mean, obviously, you
mhm,
know, I'm pretty much not the most patient person in parenting. I just want to explain everything to my kids and them get
mhm,
it. And then I'm realizing that's not probably the best way of going about it. So then I just got really real with them. I'm like, what you're doing is never going to be fruitful if you don't stop and pause and take a reset and then try again a different way. You know, the
mhm,
definition of insanity, right? Doing everything
mhm,
over and over again, expecting the exact same results or different results, but you're not going to get that
mhm.
because you're doing it the same way. Well, I don't want to give too much out of your book, so we're going to move into another question in this regards.
Okay.
But first, to the audience, get his book, because when he talks about the journey of becoming a father after being told it was never going to happen is just beautiful. And you're right. I wanted to, most infertility couples on the men's side end in divorce. The woman will leave and go
Mhm,
start another family. That's the easy fix. And then
mhm,
that person that's sterile is having to learn how to navigate that life with a
mhm,
divorce and not able to have kids. I didn't pull up the statistics, but I bet if someone goes out there and puts it in Google, it's going to find that it's a very high statistic that if men are infertile, even women too, at the point where it can't be fixable, it leads into divorce. So I
mhm,
can see how Carolyn is a saving grace for you
mhm.
guys. So moving forward, you have been a champion for nonprofits, missions, and causes that matter. I see you everywhere, and it's motivated me to plug in. What's one story or moment that reminded you this is why I do what I do?
Gosh, there's a lot, and I've just kind of been thinking through that as I was writing the book too, because part of my journey is serving.
Mm-hmm.
People have asked me, why do you do what you do? Why are you always at every nonprofit volunteer opportunity? And it's just who I am, right? I just am that way. That's the way I'm wired. Is just to serve. And sometimes it gets me in trouble because I do some things I'm like, I should be getting paid for this, right? But my time is valuable, right? I hear this in the oil and gas industry, time is money, money is time. And I'm like, my time is very valuable, but I would rather serve and give to someone than to try to sit down and figure out how much that's going to cost. And so I just pour myself. If somebody wants to pay me for it, great. If they don't, great, right? I just want to
Mm-hmm.
serve. But I'll never forget, we were working in a family business in Odessa, which is one of the reasons that brought us from the Dallas area out to the Midland, Odessa area. was we owned a fracking company where we made pump expendable parts for frac pumps, right? And this was in 2007, 2010, that time frame. And Dave Ramsey says, don't work for your family, but I work for the family. So that's the one thing that I didn't listen to him about, right? And one of the things, what the commitment was, because I fought moving out to oil and gas country. I didn't want to do that. I was in ministry. I was an educator. I was volunteering, serving. I'm like, I don't want to go work in a machine shop. That's not what I feel called to do. But we wanted to get the entire family together, with the grandparents and all the grandkids and stuff. And we were the last ones to move out here. And one of the commitments from my brother-in-law and my father-in-law was, if you come help us get this, build it up some, learn the business, get financially stable, get some things under your belt, pour into the family business, we will support you on something that you want to do in an entrepreneur philanthropy type of way. Well, I'll never forget, I'm watching a video by an organization in New York called Charity Water. And they are the largest organization that sponsors wells for people in underserved areas around the world, right? A lot of different countries, Africa, other places. And I noticed a pump on the back of that rig that was in the Central African Republic. And I was like, that looks real familiar. Looks like something we made. So I called them. They pointed me to a group in Warsaw, Indiana, and they said, this is the organization that bought. Long story short, they bought a pump that we had made some parts for another organization in Midland, and it found its way into Africa to drill water for people that didn't have access. When people are getting sick and dying because of waterborne diseases, the one thing to help them become healthy is 200 feet underground, clean water. They just don't know how to get it. Or somebody 20 years ago drilled a well and a 10-cent washer, the handle fell off, and they don't know what to do. There's no Home Depot. So they go back to the dirty river. So I was invited to go to Africa and to see this firsthand. And that's when a lot of this changed for me as far as serving people. And just, I want to be known as somebody who serves, somebody who gives, somebody who's there for other people. And so I went and we started a little nonprofit organization that started drilling wells, rehabbing wells, taking care of people's pumps in Africa, training people in Africa how to take care of their wells, putting remote monitor sensors on there so that we had teams that could find out, 4 hours away from the home base, somebody's well goes down, they can go fix it. That's what we do in oil and gas country.
Yeah.
Why can't we do that in a place like Africa? So we went to the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, all different kinds of places, helping people get access to clean water. And from that, I thought, what's going to be my mantra, right? What would I call this nonprofit? What would be the one thing that would resonate to who I am as a person and to what my calling, back to the life architect piece, is? What would that be? And I was reminded of a story in 2 Kings chapter 5 of a man named Naaman. He had leprosy. I don't know if you remember that story or not. He had leprosy, and he was told to go dip 7 times in the Jordan River, and if he did that, he would be clean. Right?
So that's Jordan 7.
And that's what it's called Jordan 7, because he didn't stop at 6. He went all the way to 7. And that is something that I've always thought, because I'm Mr. Impatient.
Hate waiting.
If I go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, take these 10 pills one at a time for the next 10 days, and then you'll be healed, right? Or it's a Z-Pack or whatever. Well, I'm the guy that's going, after 3, I'm not feeling any better. This is not working. I gotta go do something else. Naaman could have done that. He could have dipped himself the 5th time, the 6th time, going,
I see
my
no
body's not
improvement.
getting healed.
Why bother? Yes.
but he went all the way to 7 because that's what he was told. And it wasn't the water. There was no magic in the water.
It was
There's
his
no,
obedience.
his obedience.
His obedience.
So
Yeah.
when you ask me what's the story, that's the story, is whatever God tells you to do, just
Wow.
do it. Even if it's as ugly as the Jordan River, which was the worst river in
Mm.
that area of the world, was like, why would I go? I'm the king of the army. Why would I go dip myself in the worst river? Why
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
God,
being the king of the, yeah. I mean,
yeah, why
you're the
doesn't God
king.
just give me 4 strong points and I go do those? We're both coaches and mentors. It's like we give people points, here's a framework. You do these 4 things. Why didn't God just give me these things? Well, he did. He told you to go, but it wasn't glamorous. It was jump in a water 7 times and then you'll be
Mm.
clean.
Wow.
So my encouragement to you and to people who are listening is whatever God's asking you to do, just do it. Just be obedient, right?
And do
It
it
may
afraid. Do it.
do
Do
it
it
afraid. I
questioning.
love that. Do it afraid.
Do it afraid. Do it questioning. Like, okay, God, are you sure? And he'll guide you along the way, or reach out to a mentor, going, I feel
100%.
like I know that I know that I know that I need to do this, but I'm wigging out. Like, why is this my calling? Why is this my, you know?
Yeah.
And along the way, you get that encouragement that this is what you should be doing. And sometimes it's just a gut response.
Hmm.
It's like that peace of mind that everything, all the noise of the world kind of ceases when you're in alignment to what you're called to do, regardless if you're equipped. And I'm going to plug that in. If you feel very unequipped, then you're called.
Yeah. I love
You're
that.
called.
Yeah.
Like, there,
Yeah.
he's not calling someone up from the top to
Mm-mm.
do more than. He's calling from the bottom
Mhm.
because he doesn't want a know-it-all. He doesn't want someone who's at the pedestal. He wants someone that's humble enough to realize that they can do what they can do.
It's
And
the
use
flower in the crack.
the flower in the crack.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I mean, he didn't use anyone in the Bible that was totally equipped. Even if you go to
No.
King David, he was the most flaw
Oh my
man,
goodness.
but he had the most heart of Jesus,
Hmm.
like, and so I'm sitting there going, man, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to do it, and do it
Hmm.
with anxiety, do it with impatience, do it with lack of confidence, but do it. So I
Hmm.
thank you for that message. I'm ready to go do my laundry after this. I'm motivated now.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but we can if
Yeah.
you like. You launched the Catwalk podcast.
Hmm.
What inspired it, and what do you hope listeners who are tuned in walk away after each episode?
Yeah. When I finished church work, paid church staff, I kind of was searching what's my next season because I'm a big season guy. I
Yep.
don't like when people say, we want to help your career. I'm like, I'm not a career guy, I'm a seasons guy, right? I
Mm,
do 5 seasons of this, I do 2 seasons, years, whatever you want to call it. My career is to be a dad, right? To be a
mm,
husband. That's
yeah.
my career. And I'm still in that, even with adult children, I'm still in that. But
Yeah.
I had a friend who was in an oil and gas company, and going back to the part about volunteering and serving, most companies don't have a dedicated department area for community engagement. It's
Mm,
like they're very reactionary, very situational, right? Situational engagement is very episodic, it's very one time. It's, oh, there's a need, let's go fill it, we're done. But to really be involved in the community, you have to be consistent over and over and over. You have to pour into them. You have to learn what's that nonprofit's role. What do I need to do? So this organization did what most do. They collected toys at Christmas, but they didn't know where to take them. And a
mm,
couple of different organizations couldn't receive their toys because they were already full. And so they actually went to 2 different cities. So the things that they were purchasing didn't even go to the children in the city in which they work. So
wow.
I came in and I said, we're going to change some of that mantra. We're going to change some of that outlook. We're going to, we're not going to give to anybody that we're not serving.
Mm,
And so from that, we felt like the people that we were going to serve, nonprofit leaders, city leaders, school educators. Those are the people that we're going to serve. Why not interview them? Why not let them tell their story? Very similar to how you're set up with your podcast, Mel. It's just, here's your platform. How did you start? Where did you come from? What led you to run a homeless shelter? What led you to be a teacher? What led you to want to do collect food and toys? What was it that wanted you to be foster family? That's where it started. And so, how does an oil and gas company get into the space? It was a chemical company, but how does a chemical oil and gas industry company get in the space of digital podcasting? Because that's not in their wheelhouse.
No. Yeah.
Right? Typically, you say somebody in some department go give 4 hours a week to community engagement. Well, that's not really a department. That's not really a mission. That's not really a why. Because when things get hard, you're going to stop doing the things you don't have a why for. So we decided that we would launch this podcast so that people that we were serving could tell their story. And it lasted 4 seasons. We had to take a pause in it now. We're hoping to start that back up. I'm kind of changing a few things. We're going to launch in a kind of a different way. But what we did for those 4 seasons was we gave people in the community an opportunity to share their story. We weren't looking for big numbers. We weren't wanting to be the #1 podcast in West Texas, Permian Basin. We just wanted people in Permian Basin to share about people in Permian Basin. Well, did you know that this person was working at the nonprofit, and this is why they do what they do? This is a person who volunteered.
Giving them that publicity,
just
that
the publicity.
Outlet, people will volunteer. People will now know it exists. More people will join that mission because God's saying, "Okay, that's the one I want you to go do now." You hear that? You heard that?
I can't tell you how many people we've had on the show, and I've run into people around town, and they're like, "I've known that person for a long time, but I did not know their story."
Oh, wow.
Right? I had a federal judge on the show one time, and people were like, "I only see him as the guy in the robe."
Yep.
And we don't want to go see the federal judge, right? But he was able just to be real, talk about his story, how he got to the loss of his dad, and how he got to be a judge, and how he worked his way up through the court system. We didn't talk politics. We didn't do all that. That's not important. What's important is his story. And people were like, I didn't know that about him.
Humanizing the people behind what they do.
I've had the mayor on. I've had a former mayor on. I've had an educator. I've had an executive. I've had everybody. And, you know, one of the cool things about doing podcasts, and you probably know this, Mel, more than anybody, and getting involved as deeper as we are getting into social media and stuff, when you get to sit down with somebody and talk, how often do you get a chance to rub shoulders with people in an industry that you would never walk into any other day of the week? Right?
The people that have gotten to meet on this podcast, who have messaged me, "I'd like to be on your podcast," I would have never met any other way had I not been obedient and launched this podcast. The different lens, like with you on mine or whatever, has bridged a connection that was so lost in my own life, especially in 2020 when I realized in the most socially connected generation, I feel more alone and not growing. Like I'm stagnant because I don't know who to plug into. I don't want to plug into the wrong people, Lord. Yeah. And so he was like, I told Noah to build an ark, so you build a podcast. And watch 100%. What message comes out to someone struggling, and they can reach out to you. In the show notes, I'll put how they can, connect with you on LinkedIn and stuff like that. Or if they're curious about your book, because that's how we bridge it. That's how we bridge it together, is putting this message out there. Because there's one person out there who's going, you know what? I've never heard this before in this capacity, and I'm hearing it today for a reason. I need to reach out.
Volunteering and serving in your community, you're rubbing shoulders with people you would never rub shoulders with.
Yep. More
than likely. Same thing on the show. The catwalk, we chose the name catwalk because there's a piece of the platform on an oil rig that's called the catwalk.
Yeah. And
so we were an oil and gas chemical company. What do we call it? We call it the catwalk because that's also a bridge. It's a connector.
It's a connector.
And we're connecting to each other. But where else other than volunteering, podcasting, social media, where else is the vice president of an oil company going to mix with a weekend shift operator at Jack in the Box?
Mm-hmm.
They don't. They don't run in those same circles.
Or a college intern with the CEO, and they get to
Yes.
collaborating, and the CEO says, "You know what? I need to create a position for you because I need you on my
Yes.
team."
Right.
Mind
You
blowing. Like
you
if
see
you're at
that
home,
from volunteering
yeah.
and
If
serving.
you're sitting at home today, y'all, and you're stagnant and you're
Hmm.
hurting and you want to complain about everything, because here's the thing about complaining. What are you doing about it?
Hmm.
Is if you're complaining about your city or the lack of resources or whatever, I'm pretty sure in your community out there, there's nonprofits,
Hmm.
there's a school district, there is the homeless that you can plug into, even if you're not truly passionate about it. But if you start volunteering your time, you'll meet people that you would have never ever been exposed
Hmm.
to, and watch what doors and windows and everything's going to just open up for you, even in just communication
Hmm.
and support and networking.
A good.
I would not be who I am today had I not realized that. Even though I'm an introvert, now I can say I'm an
Mhm.
ambivert, because once people get to know me, I will open up. But at first, it's gut wrenching anxiety. But because I started networking and volunteering and serving in my community, I look at Midland, Odessa, because that's my home now. I'm blooming where I'm planted.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see people that I've seen all over LinkedIn or wherever, just in a different light, and it's beautiful because now that kind of makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense of who they are, because their how and their why, and you're rubbing shoulders together, and you're creating something beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you for your time here to have a little fun. You're a very busy guy. You're everywhere. It's almost like we want to say a game of not where's Waldo, where's Jay?
Yeah.
And we're going to find him in a picture somewhere
Yeah. Yeah.
on
You
social
are.
media. So you give yourself so much, or you give so much of yourself to people and the purpose and your legacy. But when you unplug, hence the name of the podcast here,
Mm-hmm.
how do you recharge your soul and fill your own cup so you can continue to give back again and again?
Wow, that's a struggle because I don't like to slow down at all. I like to stay busy, but our family's been very blessed to have a ranch outside of town that we can go to. There's no cell coverage. Um, there's not a lot of technology there, but there's land, and there's fishing, and there's being outside in God's creation, and
Mm,
being just with the family. And so we go
sounds
there a
like home.
lot. We go there a lot, and we just kind of hang out and just kind of hike and do things, be around nature. I'm also a huge sports fan, so I will find myself trying to watch a game every once in a while. Hockey is my big sport,
Mm,
and so I'm a Stars fan. We just lost
I know.
in the playoffs, so I'm kind of don't have anything to watch right now, until college football comes around. But we like to travel to see our kids. I've got one at Tech in
Yay.
Lubbock. Yeah, he's a senior, and then Krista is at Oklahoma City. She's in a dance academy there, and then my oldest is down in the Houston area. We don't get to see her, Carolyn, as much because that is a pretty far drive, and she's working and she's busy and stuff. But we want to travel some, but mostly I like to work in the backyard, some. But really, for me, it's serving as a way to unplug. It's really
Isn't
weird to
that
say
funny?
that.
We don't feel like we're tired when we're serving. I mean,
Yeah,
there is
yeah,
a part where you
'cause
don't
that's
want to
just who I
start.
am.
Yeah, yeah. There's not. I don't. I'm learning that. I'm like, well, do you ever stop? No, I don't really. But everything I'm doing has good intent behind it.
Mm,
So, it's the recharge that I needed. Well, the last question of
mm,
Unplug with Mel is to leave us with some truth. Jay, what's
Hmm.
one quote or a piece of advice you swear by? Something to encourage the folks who are in the thick of it, feeling stuck, or just trying to find their way in this season, this 2025. I mean, it's a different breed than what we're all used to.
I think it'd be two things if I could share that.
Sure.
One would be it's okay to not be okay.
Oh, yes.
It's just not okay to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
The second is I think something a good friend of mine, Corey, told me once. He was like, look down and then look up. Look down at where your feet are.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever your feet are, that's where God's placed you to be a missionary, to serve, to volunteer. So basically, I would say this: wherever your feet are, that's where your mission is. So look down and say, you know what? I'm a mom. That's where God has placed me. That's my mission. In 5 years, in 10 years, 20 years, when the kids are out of school and you want to go do something, that's your time to do it. Great. But right now, that season that you're in, if your feet are there, if you're a executive at an oil company and you're working, you know, crazy hours and not seeing your family, that's where God's placed you. You've got to find where your feet are and do what God's asked you to do. So look down, see where your feet are planted, and then look up and see how you can serve in that area.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, Jay, thank you for your time and your dedication to the West Texas Permian. I have enjoyed getting to know you in this podcast. I've learned more about you, but also outside of things in our community. And I'm so looking forward to your book coming out hopefully in a few weeks. For the audience, I will drop this when it's live, and I'll link
Mm-hmm.
the Amazon. So when you listen to this, you can go ahead and put it in your cart, buy it, and have it, come right to your door.
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to reading it myself. And I can't wait to
Thank
have
you.
you back after I read it and we talk more in depth about, the journey and healing. And, I can't wait to see how the music ties to it. A very interesting concept that I'm really looking forward to it. Well, again, thanks for coming on Unplug
Thank
with
you,
Mel today.
Mel.
It's been a fun time.
I appreciate it. You're a great person, and I'm so thankful that we finally got to meet. It was one of those things where we've heard about each other, and
Yeah,
then we finally got to meet and put a face and a name and everything, and it was great, instant friendship.
instant. And it was all being very open and honest about a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of our journeys and how we've now interconnected because we're both serving. And I'm sitting there going, "Here, you tell me your story, and then I tell you my story a little bit, and you're like, what?" And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And ta-da, friendship. Because now we know the heart of who we are and why we're doing what we're doing, the passion that fuels us. And when we know, we know. So I,
Mm-hmm.
I thank you for being obedient. And I thank you for being very vulnerable in your own growth and blessing us with your book, as well as now I know that there's three human beings that are planted with you and your wife that, I mean, this, I just look at it like, man, if that had not had happened, if Jay had
Mm-hmm.
been disobedient and that had not happened, what we would miss out on this conversation
Mm-hmm.
on. So thank you for being open
Thank
and
you, Mel.
unplugging
You're
with
very
this.
kind. You're very kind. Thank you.